Hi, writer. Want my support to get your book finished and out into the world? Join my Inner Circle membership, a community of supportive writers where each month we set goals, share pages, learn new techniques, and get you unstuck fast so that you can make continuous progress on your writing goals. Coached Writers Finish. And you can get me as your virtual book coach in this group program for only $199 a month, much less than a single one-on-one coaching session. Check out the details at susievidori.com/inner circle. We have live events happening all the time, so grab your spot now to join us. Welcome to the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast with me, Susie Vidori, where I peel back the layers of how to wow your readers with your fiction, your nonfiction. Anybody can bang out a first draft, but it takes a little more work to make your book as amazing as it can be. Join me as I share the step-by-step writing techniques you could apply to your writing right away, as I host successful writers who share a behind-the-scenes look at their own writing lives, and as I live coach writers on their pages, giving practical writing examples that will make your own writing stronger. Nobody is born knowing how to write an engaging book. There are real and important skills that you need to learn. On this show, I cut through the noise and get you all the info you need. I can't wait to see how this information is going to transform your writing. Welcome to this very special bonus episode coming to you on New Year's Day 2026, but it doesn't matter when you're listening to it. If you're listening to it later, this one's super special and I can't wait for you to hear it. Because one of the reasons that I started this podcast in the first place was to make sure that I am bringing to writers all of the advice and all of the behind the scenes by interviewing industry professionals and authors who are killing it out there. Writers who have been through what it is that you are going through right now, dear writer, which is getting your book finished, whether it's your first book or your 10th book, and getting it out into the world. And one of the things that I ask whenever I interview somebody from the writing industry on the podcast is, what is your best writing advice for someone just starting out? And the answers are wide and varied, and they are all of the snapshots of what that writer wished they'd known when they were first starting out. And we are bringing them all together here on this podcast today on this New Year's Day episode to kick off 2026. My gift to you is to bring all of these into one place. So whether you've listened to every single episode since the beginning of time, we're into the 80s now of episodes. So there's a lot of episodes. This is a great one to listen to as well. If you've never listened to anything, this is a good place to start, because if you love this writer, this industry professional, this book coach, this marketing professional, whoever the guest is, if you love what they have to say and you appreciate their advice, you can go and find an entire episode where I geek out with them and find out all their best tips. And you can go and listen to that on the Show Don't Tell podcast. So wherever you are today, this New Year's Day, or whether you're listening to it later, grab a pen and paper, open up your laptop, get ready to take notes, or just listen, let your mind wander. Figure out which pieces are you doing already, which pieces really resonate with you, and which ones might make it into your New Year's resolutions this year to give it a shot. Enjoy.
I think if you don't agree initially with it, feedback that you get from an editor, you need to be curious as to whether that's a knee-jerk initial, oh, my feelings are hurt reaction. Because of course, all our feelings are hurt when someone tells you this beautiful thing, this part, and they're saying it's not right. Yeah, it's like, oh no, and then put the knife in and twist it. Ugh. I mean, I do the same thing. I get my feedback, I read it, I get a little bit mad about it, and then I put it away for a day, and then I come back to it and I say, oh, now I get what they're trying to say, right? Your feelings will be hurt initially because I think they just can be easily. They might not be. Maybe you're a really good, strong person, but I think most of us write because we wear our hearts on our sleeves anyway. So just get curious about that feedback. And I think too, people often forget that they can come back and ask questions, right? When you're saying, hey, this isn't working for me, and you explain why, there's nothing wrong with that writer coming back to you and saying, wait, I need you to explain this a bit to me more, or I don't understand exactly, or I disagree with this, but I'm not sure why. Can we discuss? That's the part that you want to keep.
Yeah. Now, all editors are not open to this, but I don't know what your policy is, but my policy certainly is, I mean, we go through on a phone call and we go through the nitty gritty, but I do it pretty quickly after the writer has gotten the feedback. Okay. So, Joanne, if you could leave these listeners with one piece of advice, what's your best piece of your go-to advice for a new writer who's just joining this industry and trying to make a go of it? And what would you tell yourself when you were starting?
Gosh, what's coming up for me right now is to just write, to really be brave, get words on the page. Don't get paralyzed by trying to follow a certain type of structure or method. Use those as tools in your toolbox. Get words on the page, get clear about why you're writing, what you want to say, and then apply those tools. Then go find the tools that you need to fix the things that you need to fix instead of trying to shoehorn your story into a particular way of doing things.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Best advice, Phyllis, for those listening to the podcast today who are wanting to write a memoir? What's your best advice that you could give them?
I would say write what you want to write. And when it comes to getting feedback, really vet the people that you get the feedback from, because there's all kinds of things out there for you to get feedback from. Because you don't want somebody that's going to do what the first person did with me, right? To really take the wind out of your sails. Yeah, so vet the people that you're working with. Because the fact that you want to write a book, you've just taken the biggest step ever. I mean, to actually put a word on a piece of paper. I mean, that so many people don't even do that.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited that your journey is where it is today. I am just here cheering you on, Phyllis. I can't wait until you get all those speaking gigs and this story gets out into the world.
Remember, only be one place at a time. Don't try and be everywhere all at once. It will really burn you out. And it doesn't make sense. Your reader isn't everywhere. So just pick one platform or one way of reaching readers. Give yourself a writing date. Show up, whether that's, minimal or maximum, and be consistent.
Yeah, I love that. And growing anything and any type of platform, that is absolutely right. Pick one thing and be consistent with it. So, if you're looking at all the things and thinking that you need to be everywhere all at once, oh, I just learned about Substack. Oh, I also need to be on all these social media platforms. Oh, I should have a newsletter.
Yeah.
I should,
have a podcast.
Yeah, I should have a podcast. I should, as Susie did, volunteer for the local writers festival. I mean, all of those things, pick one. As I absolutely resonate with that. What's your best writing advice for new writers just starting out? If you were to go back, what would you have wanted to know?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think that the spirit of curiosity and playfulness and not taking it quite so seriously. And again, this is such a new revelation for me, such a new understanding that
I love it for you, though. It fits so well.
Yeah, I haven't fully wrapped my brain around it yet, but I'm just trying to live with it and experience it. Just being okay with all of it. Being okay with the writing coming out and sounding terrible, being okay with being rejected, being okay with missing a day of writing that you expected to write, being okay with all of it being part of the process and just not getting yourself so tangled up in knots about it, because when we do that, it just creates a bigger mindset issue. And then we have to deal with that bigger mindset issue. And then we start thinking that it's all true and we never write anything. So,
yeah, I mean, you're feeling called to be creative. So that curiosity and that playfulness is a really good way to go about calling in your creativity. Okay, Mickey, what's your best advice for writers starting out? What's your best advice? Whether it's about PR or not about PR, what's your best advice?
Know what you want to do, have a vision, and don't give up when things don't work out initially, and increase your branding to always look professional in everything.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. And you are like walking that walk and talking that talk. I love that. what's your best advice for writers who get like all kinds of what feels like completely different advice from critique partners?
Yeah, I think it's really common, unfortunately, because that's one of the things, for example, that I love about my Tuesday group. We all have different strengths. So there's one person who is always going to be talking about world building. That's me. Another person that's really focused on plot, and another person that's really good on character. And so we each bring something a little bit different. And sometimes that works really well. And sometimes it feels like it's conflicting. If I'm like, no, the problem is world building, and somebody else is, no, the problem is plot, and somebody else is, oh, the problem is character. We can all be right. I love to tell this story. I entered a writing contest. This has been like probably about 10 years ago, where we got 2 sets of feedback on our pages. So it was for a conference. You submitted your first 25 pages of your manuscript, you got feedback back. I got my 2 sets of feedback, and one of them said, the pacing of this is really slow. And the other one said, the pacing on this is really fast, too fast. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? I don't understand what to do about this. When I looked at their feedback, what I realized is they were both right. The character motivation was off, which made it feel too rushed because they didn't understand why the character was doing what it was doing. The person who said that it was too fast, and the one that said it was too slow, they felt it was too slow because, again, they didn't understand why the things on the page were happening because the character motivation wasn't clear. So I think part of the thing to do, it's like a puzzle. When you get conflicting feedback, figure out what the common thread is. And it's probably something that none of the 3 of them said, but that when you figure it out, that's going to empower you to make the changes that are going to really make the most difference in your story.
What's your best advice for memoirists that are just starting out?
I think I took great guidance in my not including anybody else's secret. I included conversations I had with people and the interactions and how it impacted me. But if someone shared something with me that was personal, that's not something they signed up to. I left that out. It was my reaction to conversation. That's where it is.
Yeah, I love that. Setting boundaries. And that's something when I work with memoirists, that's something that we have a discussion about really early on is where are your boundaries? And you had those already when we met. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your best advice for writers who are just starting out wanting to write a memoir or any book?
I will go back to the succinct answer that you helped me with is to do some planning. Planning doesn't mean that everything is set in stone. It doesn't mean that you're squashing your creativity. It just means that you're putting some guardrails on your projects, especially with memoir, where you have your whole life that you can pull from. Spend some time up front planning and then go write.
Awesome. What's your best advice for writers who are listening today who want to independently publish? What's the best thing that you want to tell them that you wish that you know when you started this journey?
There are groups out there who have already figured out a lot of the steps to become an independent published author and how to market. And so could I have researched each individual piece of information on my own? Sure. And I did for a while until I found a group that clicked with me. And so now I'm working with them and they teach me how to do a release, how to do front matter, how to do backwater, how to do keywords, all that lovely stuff that we hate.
Yeah, all that scary stuff that sounds scary until you're like, oh, it's just that. Now, yeah, and the thing is, whether you publish independently or however you publish, we're so focused on the writing for 20 years, right? And then all of a sudden, there's all these other pieces to becoming an author, whether independently especially, because you have to learn all of those things. But even traditionally published, you still have to pay attention to all of those things and help them. They don't do everything for you, right? Like even the keywords, I know lots of traditionally published authors who pay attention to that and help their publishers with it. Be like, hey, this is missing and I'm seeing this trend or whatever, right? Like how do people find your books is such a big part of it. Okay, great advice. We don't have to go it alone. That's what we're all about at the podcast. It is, yeah, you don't have to write alone. You don't have to publish alone. There are smart people out there. And at the end of the day, who
really have started this journey because you want to have a conversation with the world and you want people to read it. Whether we tell ourselves that's scary or whether we probably all secretly hope that people are going to find our books. I love them. So yeah, so reach out. Don't be afraid to ask all of those questions. Great advice.
We'll be right back.
Hey, writer, ready to take your fiction to the next level? Whether you've just got a great idea or you're already stuck in the murky middle of writing your book, the Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp I designed just for you. This 8-week self-paced online course gives you the tools, the guidance, and the support you need to get to the end of your book and know that it is wicked good. Head to susiebedoria.com/bootcamp or follow the link in the show notes for more information and get started today. I'll see you inside where I'll be there to support you as you comment and share your work throughout the course.
The secret in writing for me has been sharing my work with critique partners. So at the same time I started doing this, I had just joined a local group through my library. And check out your library because there are writers groups usually, or you can start one through your library and then they host it. For me, I share almost everything that I write with these critique partners. I also share everything with my sister who reads kind of my zero drafts, and she is a reader. She's not a writer. So she's really able to tell me, this is exciting. I like this idea. And I find that then talking about the different stories with people is the way that I can kind of prioritize in my mind what I'm excited about working on. And I think that following that excitement, really thinking about which story is the most exciting to you. It's how I got through my last novel that I wrote. I had been writing a young adult fantasy that was really dark and kind of sad and heavy. And I was like, COVID hit and I was like, I can't do this. I cannot keep working on something that's just so heavy and dark and isn't bringing me joy. I literally sat down and was like, what are things that make me happy? And I put them all together and I said, I'm going to write a book with all of these elements, like Kesha's Rainbow Album and theater people and space, because it's got to be set in space, and all of these things that bring me joy. And that's kind of what I follow. I look at these stories and I go, which ones bring me the most joy? And those are the ones that I work on.
What's your best advice for writers wanting to start a social media presence?
Just start. Just start. Start before you think you're ready. And you can start small and that's big, start with those little personal pieces. But just get it going. Just get it going and push the publish. Don't worry about it and move on with it and just have fun with it.
Awesome. What's your best writing advice for writers?
Oh, I will say to take your time. We're living in this new age where you can literally, just press a button and publish your book. And I think that's most often is a huge mistake because a lot of times we're just not ready. And it takes, what's that saying that it takes 10,000 hours or 1,000,000 words in order
10,000 hours to become a master or a maestro in your field, whatever that field is.
And it's very tempting to try to short circuit that process and shortcut to right to the end goal. But it is a journey. It is a process. You learn as you go and you only learn by doing. And so resist the urge to rush to the end and just take your time, study your craft, surround yourself with people who are in the field, maybe slightly, at different levels, but slightly ahead of you so that you can learn from them, and just let it take as long as it needs to take before you go that step. Because once you go and you're putting books out there, now it's really hard to get them back and to get readers.
Pull it back. Yeah. And I mean, that's why I love that question. Can you share one strategy that you've employed that's worked for you and for the writers that you're working with?
So the biggest thing for me personally has been outlining. Outlining for me has been massive for two reasons. The first reason is because it lets me visualize the whole book, but particularly the end, because people with ADHD have kind of a deficiency in dopamine in the brain, which activates the reward center. It gets people excited for finishing a task, basically. But when you don't have as much of that dopamine in your brain, it can be difficult to envision the ending and how you're going to feel about finishing. So a lot of people, especially when they're faced with a hard task, if you're neurotypical, you can visualize what it's going to be like to finish, and then you get really excited about it. You know, you get that anticipatory feeling of joy or glee or satisfaction or whatever. And for a lot of people with ADHD, that's really difficult to do. So an outline helps you see the ending. And the other thing about an outline is it gets you organized. So you can break down your entire novel, which is, you know, a pretty daunting task to think about writing a book, into small, manageable chunks. So you have all of your scenes broken down. I myself write linearly, so I write from chapter 1 all the way to the end. But for a lot of people, they like to jump around and they like to pick this scene out and write this one that day, you know, this one the next day, and then cobble it all together at the end. So having an outline written out allows you to have more choice and more freedom. And that can be especially important if you're having a day where you're not particularly motivated to write. You know, you're not really into the scene you have been working on at the moment. You can just pick a different one and write that instead. And so that, for the ADHD brain, you know, is kind of, it has a lot of novelty to be able to just pick the most exciting parts whenever you want. And so that really helps to get to the end of the book.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a cobbler myself. I call myself a quilter. I think you've probably heard that before. There's plotters and pantsers, and then there's those of us that plots, and then we pick and choose and quilt it all back together. I must say that I work with most neurotypical writers do linear. I think it depends on your life. It's on how much time you have. And I like to say it all has to get done. So whatever you're feeling in the moment, pick a task and tackle it during that hour that you've got and get it done. It isn't the most efficient way, I got to say, to cobble it together at the end. I mean, there's more work, right? There's more revision because you've got to make it all match and you've got to make the arcs all work and everything. And sometimes you don't know everything when you write that middle scene at the very beginning. I often start with the climax, actually, because that's usually what comes to me first, is that like moment of resolution. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it does. It all has to get done. So I love that you're giving people tools to do that if that's their inclination. What's your best advice for writers just starting out? Not all the advice, I know you could, but if you could just give new writers one thing, what would it be?
If you're writing fiction, one tip. Oh, this is so difficult.
I know, right?
I'm going to go with my instinct.
Okay.
I feel like I could say a few more things, but the first thought is really work on designing a good scene. I think that if you can design a good scene, you will be in a stronger place than if you're trying to come up with some really complicated, multi-character, multi-timeline story. The character wants something. They try to get it. They are surprised in some way, for good or ill, and they try to react to this surprise and try to figure out something new. And I think just working on that for a while, for some period of time, I think is a really good starting point. Because from there, that same thing I just said can be the description of a whole novel. A person wants a thing, they try to get it, they are surprised, they come to a new reality. But I think that trying to work on that craft technique, that framework can be really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. And it's true. A lot of times, newer writers come wanting to emulate this really complex structure of a book. And the truth is, a lot of times they aren't ready to tackle that because it makes it way harder. It makes the writing like 10 times harder to do it. And the chance that they're going to do it not well is high. And the thing is, at the end of the day, that plot structure doesn't necessarily make for a stronger book unless you're writing something like a thriller or psychological thriller or suspense where you need that. For most books, it's not, but tackle it one at a time, right? Like the next book, next one. When you're bored of writing because you know it so well, then you can throw in those little things that make it really neat. Yeah, I love that. What's your best fantasy writing advice for those wanting to work in the genre? And then I'm going to ask you for generic or general advice in a second.
So I think the best place to start is with the world. You need to have an idea of your setting. And so one of the best ways to begin with that process is just to ask what if. What if, I don't know, there was no more oceans or something like that, like the world, there's just like a few lakes, like something like that. You start beginning to wonder then, well, what kind of people would live in this world? What kind of conflicts would there be in their life? And then all of a sudden you start add layer and layer and layer, and it all begins with a simple what if, and just following different trails. And one of the main things is to not settle on the first idea. So you may go down one path in the question, but go back, ask it again, and see where it takes you, and then see how many different ideas you can come up with, and really sort of interrogate things before you settle on an idea, so that you know you're picking the right direction and the one that you're happy with. So that's what I would say.
I love that. That's super helpful advice. I'm going to add to that because they're going to go away and write this world building exercise, the what if. And I just want to remind our listeners that is not chapter 1. You are not going to put that 3 pages that you write as your opening to your book. It does not count. It's brainstorming separately. But yes, thinking about that world and making decisions, because I find, especially as an editor, and I know that you edit as well, but as an editor, I can tell if you haven't made a decision or you thought, oh, I'll decide that later, and I read something about it, it's going to feel so generic and bland. I'm like, you haven't decided yet how this magic works, right? Like, you don't know. So make those decisions, because even if you make a decision and it turns out to not work later, or you want to change it, you won't end up with these bland passages, which are placeholders for when you decide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do Richie's thing. Go explore it. And what's your best general advice, fantasy or not, for writers that are just starting out?
I would say the new writers try to capture the enthusiasm as much as possible, and preserve it for as long as you can. There's a lot of things that will derail you, or try to derail you. Imposter syndrome will probably kick in at some point, and then you'll start to question whether you can do it. And tied to that, I'd say, is keep your targets when you're starting out. Nice and easy. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, because if you start committing yourself to 200,000 word novels, then you are going to run into a lot of problems, because it's going to take a long time to write. The doubt is going to creep in. You're probably going to give up. So I think that's why short stories are good, because you can finish off nice projects. You can start sending them out, and if you with a bit of luck, you might get some published, and then that'll just set you on like a completely different path. It'll give you more confidence going into like a bigger project, like a novel.
And you'll often get feedback during that process as well that might help you with your larger projects. So amazing advice. Thank you so much, Richie.
If you could, to the listeners out there, Simon, who are listening to this, getting inspired by everything that you've done, what is your best advice to a writer just starting out?
What is my best advice to a writer just starting out? Cool. What a question. I would say don't give up, I would think. Yeah. Just keep going, really. That's what I did, really. And
that's what you did, and that's what you inspired me to do. So that is very, very good. Just keep showing up and keep going.
Keep showing up. Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing is, although I've got this project at the moment, my current project, which is in good shape, and I've got another couple as well. Then there's another one that started to bubble up to the surface as well, which I hadn't really thought that I wanted to do anything with. But it's like you said earlier about having ideas isn't a problem. I've got lots of that, and even some of these stories about the superhero comic book universe story. I don't think I would never do a sequel to that, but I think, well, yes, but the ideas I had for the sequel.
Never say never, Simon.
Well, yes,
never.
That's the thing. I don't think I'd do a sequel to that, but some of the ideas that I had, because that book came out in 2006, I think. But I would probably, I could certainly do I could use some of the ideas that I had for it and things. And so there's always stuff, or there seems to be. So if somebody just starting out, don't give up.
Don't give up. All right. So what is your best advice for writers who are just starting out? What do you wish that you'd known when you started this whole journey?
Just do it. Just do it. Don't allow fear to implement it in your mind, making you think, oh, it needs to look like this, or it needs to sound like this, or you need to have once upon a time, or you need to have the whole backstory before. No, I think we get stuck on the logistics or what it should look like and how it should appear without actually doing it. It's like putting on clothes. We just need to put them on so we're not naked, and we go out and we just do it. And I think when it comes to writing, we do it. You know what I mean? And it's like fashion. Like, I know fashion. Like, I know how to dress myself. I know how to look good. But when it comes to somebody else, if they're going to see it as fashion or if they're going to like it, then that's a choice. That's very selective. And I realize that life is very subjective. So it's very selective and it's very specific for each person. And when it comes to our writing, we have to go about it in that manner. Not everybody's going to like your book, and it's okay. And I think that's what I think a lot of people who are listening, especially those people who know it in their heart, that they have a story worth sharing, is to remember it's not for everybody. It's for you and that one single person that's out there that may see that book, may read that book, may hold that book, and finally find somebody that sees and knows that you're alive and they've experienced your pain. They felt the contradictions of life. They felt anything and everything that's in between. Even if it's fantasy, even in the fantasy realm, I do not care.
Especially, I would
You
say,
know what I
if it's
mean?
fantasy.
Exactly. Like, you can do so much. You can make it so relatable and so seen and so real that it's like, why not? Why not do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Just do it.
Just do it. Credit to Nike.
Yeah. Great.
What is your best advice for business folks wanting to write a book on whatever it is that they do?
I think for us, I guess we have a good niche. So finding a niche would be important. Like, there are a lot of business books out there already. So it helps being able to have a unique topic. And then ultimately being able to write in a manner that is understandable to people and write to your audience and give them information that they're actually going to need. And think about how you talk to clients on a day-to-day basis. When do your clients have their aha moment and say, thank you so much, this was so helpful, and kind of translate how you interact with clients that way, but into a book.
Yeah, and narrow that down. I love that. Clark, what do you think?
I think something we've already talked about a couple times, the phrase that I often use, which is knowing what you don't know. And in this case, that was, again, the reason why I included Sonia with writing this book. But I think any professional writing a book has to recognize that and use external resources, whether it is collaboration with somebody else, as I've done with Sonia, whether it's reaching out to you, Susie, for what you assisted with, or other professionals, as Sonia, you and I did with some other professionals, assisting with some sections in the book, giving their views on it. I think that's very important, is that accomplishing a project like this on your own, I think, is very difficult. So again, recognizing where you do need assistance and those areas that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, beyond the technical aspects of pulling a book together, which absolutely a book coach, an editor, like, you can learn a ton. But beyond that, we often think that if we write everything ourselves, it makes us sound smart and we'll have more credibility. But studies have found that if you actually reference other people in your field, it builds your credibility. It doesn't take away from it, right? So the fact that you can bring in other resources, so whether there are resources to help you write the book, whether they're resources in your own life, or whether they're resources in your industry to even be able to quote other pieces of information or use facts from other resources, actually makes you more credible as a writer and gives you more power in the reader's mind. So yeah, I love that advice. Okay, I'm gonna ask Clark first so that he doesn't have to come up with something new. What is your best advice for writers wanting to co-write a book with someone else? Is there anything that you did that you love doing that you do again? Is there anything you maybe wish you'd done a little bit differently?
I think initially writing a chapter together before you tackle the rest of the book. And, going back to my comment about that sense of accomplishment after writing the first chapter, had Sonia and I, rather than just independently writing sections over topics that we were each dealing with independently, it would have given us the opportunity to maybe earlier than we did come up with chapter structures, style of writing, a little bit more common. And I think that would have made writing the book a little bit easier with a co-author.
Yeah, fair. Sonia, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree to that with that sentiment. Otherwise, co-authoring a book, I think it's just keeping each other accountable. Make sure you're writing a book with someone who is going to be able to do it. And yeah, I think that ultimately it's hard when you're taking on such a big project and you're relying on someone else to actually move things forward. So when you're deciding to write a book with someone, make sure you choose someone who you trust to actually go forward with the process. Because the worst thing would be, well, I've done all of my work and, you haven't. But luckily, Clark and I think it's been great. We've been working really, really well together. We both keep each other accountable and we're always on time, essentially, with our own deadlines.
Awesome. What's your best advice for those feeling called to write personal memoir?
Just sit down and do it. Don't question yourself. I wrote from the heart, big time. And that is another comment a lot of people have made. And it's very personal. And yeah, it is. I don't think I held back, really. We did. And I did. Glenn, there was lots we didn't put in the book. Tons we didn't put in the book.
Writing a memoir doesn't give the world an all access pass into your life. And so
No.
it's okay to have boundaries for sure. You don't have to share everything. And if you're sharing things to spare people's feelings or things because it's too personal or things because it's off topic, those are all totally valid reasons to share things.
And a lot of it too was, we left a lot of family stuff out. There's really no need for that either. But yeah, and there were things we would have liked to have put in there, but decided not to.
Hey, it's all part of the choices. And it turned out to be a wonderful book. I've read it a couple of times. It's hard to get through, but it's really great. I'm so excited to see where this is opening up doors slowly this year, but it's coming. Like you said, that right person reading the book and the legacy continues. What is your best advice for writers who are just starting out?
Oh, that's such a good question. Writers who are just starting out, be kind to yourself. I think that's probably one of the most important things. Like, know that it really does not have to be perfect or even good when it first hits the page. You can edit a big old pile of poo into beautiful prose, but if you don't get it on the page, you got nothing to edit. So just put aside that perfectionism, put aside I always tell my writers, like, password protect it if you need to. Like, no one gets to see it until you're ready. Just let it pour out, and then you can go back and make it good later and just keep learning as you go. I think all writers, and I'm sure you back me up on this, Susie, like, we're always learning. We're always practicing our craft. We're always reading craft books and attending workshops. And like, I have a whole shelf of writing books. I love them. And I'm always learning new stuff.
And it's interesting you say that because I often get questions about, like, you went from working on, Wall Street to writing, and I don't understand that. And the thing is, number one, you don't have to understand it. Thank you for your comment. But number two, it's because we are always learning and changing. And in the first 20 years of my business executive career, I moved and shook and did all the things and changed careers or changed jobs like all the time because I was always looking for a new challenge. And I've been doing this a long time, and I can't imagine that I'm ever going to get bored because we are always learning. I find it super fascinating. It's the reason that I have this podcast to bring other people. And it's the reason when we were introduced, I was like, yes, come on the podcast. I need to talk to you because you've been doing some really deep thinking about what really helps writers. And that's what this whole thing is all about is there is no one right way to write. And you've got to figure out so much more about your body and your mind and your intentions and things that people don't realize. It's a whole thing to write a book.
And everyone is a new challenge. I'm with you. Like, I love that. I think some people would find that frustrating that, like, oh, I wish there was a formula, but I love that there's not. Every time I have a new idea, I'm like, ooh, what's this one going to be like? Like, what's the structure? What's the POV? What's the...
Exactly. As you said, there are guidelines, and I try to break down complex things and put together. But you don't have to follow all of them. Do a few of them. You can't do everything. Do a few of them, and your book is going to be special because it's from you. Polish a few things that you resonate with. Do those techniques really well, and the rest are going to work out. Okay. This has been amazing.
That is one of the pieces of advice that a lot of the women in women writing have said is that, and these are often coming from writers who have, they're maybe 40, 50, 60 years old, and they're saying you have to just do it. You have to take that time for yourself, put yourself on the schedule and not feel like everything is for everybody else. And I totally agree with that, because when you give yourself that time, you have more energy for everyone else. And we forget that, right? If we're giving all the time, we get depleted. But if we take that time for ourselves to do the things we love, then we have more to give. Like it sounds counterintuitive, but I think it really is true.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I went through something similar for me. That 40 was that light bulb, and I've never really framed it this way before, but just listening to you talk, for me, I was at the top of my career. I was an executive, a chief operating officer. I was traveling around the world. But I've always thought, I kind of had this 40 under 40 mentality, or by the time I'm 40, I will have done these things. And my bucket list was write a book. And I had a draft, and I had a draft. It took me quite a long time to find a publisher, but I hadn't found a publisher when I was 40. And it was kind of like this wah moment, right? Where I just was like, all right, I didn't do it, right? And I know my list is longer. People's lists are in their entire lifetime, but it didn't feel great. And so I had a huge party. I was I was excited to launch my book that year, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But instead, I had a giant 40th birthday party and just celebrated anyway. And I just went, this is my time. And you know what? I did find a publisher that year. I did find a publisher. I did have that big book launch. And I did not have any idea that a decade later, I'd be doing this full time. That was not even on my radar, right? Like, you talk about something for yourself and thinking that it will just be sort of a side gig, right? Or this hobby. And then it kind of just took over my life and became who I was. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Absolutely. You really start to follow your joy. When I was 50, I mean, I've been speaking to my husband for a couple of years before I turned 50 that I thought I might want to take early retirement from teaching. And then COVID hit, and that was not a great time for teachers. And so we started to recover from COVID, and I was turning 50 in 2022. And we were just on a walk one day, and I said, I was probably complaining about something or other. And he says, I think you're done. And I said, I think I'm done too. I had a resignation in the next day, and I finished the school year 6 weeks, and I was done. So I did. It just
wow. It happened that fast, and you didn't even know, right?
No, it
snuck up on you.
Yeah, life-changing moment, a decision, and I don't know if you're the same or if anyone else is the same, but when I make the right decision, I feel it in my body, right? Like I just feel it. If I'm making the wrong decision, my body is it's not right. Like I can tell things aren't quite right. And, I didn't know what I was going to do next. I knew I would write, but I didn't even know about book coaching until, probably 6 months later, I came across Jenny Nash's Author Accelerator. So, you just kind of have to pay attention to the signals and kind of say, okay, well, life is short, and what else do I want to do? And a lot of people just feel like they have to stay in unhappy situations for a long time because, pension or whatever the reason. Everyone has a reason for staying in the same place. But I don't know. I think life is really short, and we have to take risks.
Yeah. And congratulations. And it is a risk, right? Like it's not, and it depends on your circumstance. Not everybody can take that risk at that moment, but that's amazing that you were able to make that decision. But what skills, because I work with a lot of writers that come from other backgrounds, and I love working with writers who come from other careers, and they think it's like a detriment. Oh my gosh, like I'm not a writer. Like who am I to come into here? And that's not the way that I see it, because everybody brings skills from somewhere else. And the beauty of being a writer is you can come from anywhere. You still need to learn how to write and learn the skills. But for you, what did you find that being a teacher has brought to your writing career?
Well, yes. And I mean, at the beginning, I probably didn't quite make the connection, but now I look back and I think, Oh, all of those things have really helped me inadvertently. Like those are skills that I'm using all the time now. And I'm always encouraging teachers because I know there's a lot of them who want to write a book. I'm not suggesting it's the excuses as in a negative way, but we all have that, right? We say, well, I don't have time and family. We have all the reasons why we can't. And my suggestion is there's so many reasons why you can, whether you're a teacher or in a different profession. There's ways to carve out little moments in your day. Like I remember, well, as a teacher, this is a tip for teachers. I was an English teacher, so that's also useful. But I would give my kids time, 10 to 15 minutes a day to do a quick write, which meant that they were writing and I would write too. Sometimes I'd write the quick write. Sometimes I'd write on my novel. And they sort of clued into the fact that I was working not on the quick write because they'd say, well, can you read it? And I'd say, well, I was actually working on my novel. And they really wanted to know about that, right? So there was this really interesting back and forth about that. But there are moments in your day, stay a little later after work, spend 20 minutes, lunchtime, write. Find those little nuggets of time. You don't need to have 3 hours in a day or write every day from 9 till noon or whatever it is. You need 10, 15, 20 minutes here and there and just go at it and get words on pages. And all of a sudden you have something,
Exactly. And I think when you're trying to fit that in, remember, give yourself credit for everything, not just words on page. But yes, words on page are important. But even, that write every day advice that we talked about at the beginning of this, it's like maybe not write every day, but think about it every day. Stay close to it. Daydream something. I like to say, if you're not up for writing, don't stare at a blank page. Go for a walk and take one of your characters with you and think about it. Like all that stuff has to get done, not just the writing piece. So, what is it that you can do? Okay, let's talk more about your SMART goal. If that's your goal, you might want to get really specific. That's very nice and specific. But set up these whatever systems you need to keep yourself accountable too, right? So you're going to say, like, I am part of this SMART goal statement that you're going to make is I am going to write for 15 minutes on the commute every morning, or I am taking Saturday morning. I am, locking my office door, and I did quotation fingers there because we don't all have an office to which we can lock the door. But whatever that looks like for you, if it's just a desk in the the corner of the kitchen, that still works. Whatever it is, just write that out. Just writing it down and solidifying that in your mind and seeing it in print on a piece of paper, I don't know what the brain science is behind it, but it has been shown to actually be so motivating for people, right? Amazing. So relevance is the next bit of our SMART goal. And if you've written your why statement, as I just sort of urged you to do as part of the strategy, then you've written your relevance statement, right? You know why it's important for you to do this work. So you've done and dusted that piece of it. And then time bound or timely is I like to say, that's when stuff gets real, right? Because people start to get very scared of dates and deadlines. I don't know. There's something about putting a stake in the ground and actually pointing to a day on the calendar and saying, this is when I'm going to be done, or even this is when I'm going to start. That just oh, now it's real. It's going to happen. And that's why it's so important, because you're solidifying that plan in your mind, right? You're making it real. You're committing. So committing to it, is that, yeah. No, that's exactly it. Whereas before, it's just all kind of floating around in your head, I'm going to do this, or I'll sit down when I have a couple of minutes. Not prioritizing it. I mean, think about all the other things that go on our to-do lists.
Oh my gosh.
Mentally,
now my head is swirling.
I could list a lot of things today. And a lot of those things don't happen, not because we didn't have the best of intentions, but because they didn't get written down and had an official time for when they were going to happen. So what you're doing is you're just putting all these pieces into place to make your writing practice, which is what is going to lead you to a finished book. You're putting the pieces of that writing practice in place and making it real. Okay. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. So so we're all tracking with you. All the listeners at home have got their SMART goals and been writing furiously as Carrie talks. I know you guys are all on top of this. We're getting specific. We're measuring it. It's attainable. It's relevant. It's time bound. What is your best advice for new writers starting out on writing, on the process, on whatever it is that you want to share? If you were to do it again right now,
I think I had a very good path in that I sought out help early. I didn't try to do it all by myself. It was really important to me to connect with other writers and to connect in particular with people who knew a lot more about writing than I knew, like Kathy. And it just happened that we lived in the same town. It just happened that we became friends. And so she's a true mentor to me. And I think finding those mentors is really important. Finding those writers who will support you as you will support them. And then writing and writing and reading and reading and writing and reading and writing and reading. Those are the things that will get you off into a career in writing.
Amazing.
You've shared so much advice already during this podcast. But my last question for you is, what is your best advice for someone just starting out? What do you wish that you'd known when you started?
I had somebody gave me the right advice because I didn't know it when I started out. My friend of mine said to me, Terrence M. Green, a great science fiction writer, Green, no E at the end, 2-time World Fantasy Award finalist who mentored me when I was starting off. He said, Rob, you got to stop worrying about what your mother is going to think if she reads this. Because I was pulling my punches in terms of language, in terms of sex when it was appropriate for the plot, in terms of being naked on the page, which is what you are as a writer. You are revealing through your characters, all of whom, with one degree or another, are proxies for you, your innermost fears, your innermost prejudices, your innermost desires. And he said, you're afraid of what your mother would think. You're pulling your punches on the page. You have to be absolutely honest and naked as a writer and comfortable standing there stark naked, metaphorically, on the page for the reader. That's the best piece of writing advice I ever got. And I got it, fortunately, only about 8 years after I'd started writing. I wish I'd had it on day one.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
And what's your best advice for writers thinking about writing a nonfiction or self-help or versus memoir? What's your best advice for those listeners that are out there thinking about writing a memoir or something with nonfiction in it?
I think one of the most important things is to be open to the multiple stories that are going to be told. We start writing a book about a dating app, and then you really are unearthing stuff about maybe trauma, joy, aging. And so there are always multiple levels of stories going on and at the same time, and kind of being open and attentive, and don't try and sort of categorize things too much, especially at the beginning, but kind of let the things bubble to the surface and give it time to take shape.
Yeah, give it time. Figure out how to incorporate all of those things into
Writing is so much about making decisions about what to keep and what not to keep for this particular project. Even if you take something up for this book, it doesn't mean you have to throw it away, because chances are you return to it.
It's great advice because we want to include everything. And sometimes you're saying let all the things bubble up, but that doesn't mean include everything that's off topic. We have to organize them in a way that is sort of a thread through that the reader can manage. And if it doesn't, absolutely. Maybe those will be in the next book. Thanks for tuning in to the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast with me, Susie Vidori. It is my absolute honor to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or the book that you're planning to write. Please help me keep the podcast going by helping people find us. You can subscribe to the podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening to show how much you enjoy the show. That's how other listeners will find us. Also, visit susievidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly inspired writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about all the upcoming training events and writing courses that happen in my community. Want my eyes on your writing? Submit a page of your current draft for a chance to come on the podcast at the link in the show notes. I'd love to chat with you about your writing in my always positive, incredibly supportive way, so that you can make great strides towards your writing goals. I'm here to cheer you on. Remember, that book you're writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make that it the absolute best it can be. See you again right here next week.